Very few people have ever heard of Sabbatai Zevi, who declared himself to be Messiah in 1666. He amassed a following of over 1 million believers, half the world's Jewish population during the 17th century, by proclaiming that redemption was available through acts of sin. Considered a heretic by many of his contemporary rabbis, nonetheless his fame extended far and wide. Sabbatai's adherents planned to abolish many of the ritualistic observances because, according to the Talmud, in the Messianic time there would no longer be holy obligations. Fasting days became days of feasting and rejoicing. Sexual promiscuity, adultery, incest, and religious orgies were encouraged and practiced by Sabbateans. After Sabbatai Zevi's death, his philosophy would be continued and expanded on by his Kabbalistic successor, Jacob Frank. Frankism, a religious movement of the 18th and 19th centuries, centered on the leadership of the Messiah claimant Jacob Frank. He, like Zevi, would perform strange acts that violated traditional religious taboos, such as eating fats that were forbidden by Jewish dietary laws, ritual sacrifice, promoting orgies, and sexual immorality. Jacob Frank would eventually enter into an alliance formed by Adam Weishaupt and Mayer Amschel Rothschild called the Order of the Illuminati. The objectives of this organization was to undermine the world's religions and power structures in an effort to usher in a utopian era of global communism, covertly ruled by their hidden hand, the New World Order. Using secret societies such as the Freemasons, their agenda has played itself out over the centuries, staying true to the script. Opposition is handled by a near total control of the world's media, academic opinion leaders, politicians, and finance. While still considered a conspiracy theory to many, more people are waking up each day to the reality that this is not just a theory, but a true conspiracy.
And what about this thing that you call the hidden hand?
In the 17th century, and I'll make this brief, the details all in the book, a man emerged, a Jewish man called Sabbatai Zevi, and he claimed to be the Jewish Messiah. Messiah had arrived. And he gathered behind him a phenomenal following. All the stuff about this in the book comes from Jewish sources who know about this. And he had 1 million followers at one point. We're looking at the 17th century. And he created a cult which inverted everything. This is the whole basis of it. So whatever Judaism stood for, it would invert and do the opposite. This cult became known as Sabbateanism. And so if you had a day in Judaism, which was a day of fasting, then in Sabbateanism, it will be a day of feasting. They inverted everything. So if you had a taboo about sex with children, Sabbateanism would not only remove the taboo, it would make it something to be desired, something to do. And the way they sold this in this cult was that the more evil you do, basically the quicker God will come and sort it out. I mean, you know, I know, but that's how they sold it. And this cult eventually led to a point where Sabbatai Zevi was in the Ottoman Empire in Turkey. And he was given a choice by the Sultan to either renege on his Sabbateanism religion and become a Muslim, or he'd get business. And he decided that he would considering it, I think I'll become a Muslim. But of course, that was only on the surface. And Sabbateanism, and so many were following Sabbatai Zevi, followed Sabbateanism within the apparently conversion to Islam. And these people became known in the Islamic world as the Donma, which means to turn. And one of the things that I show in the book is that these Donma ended up infiltrating the Islamic religion and becoming the Saudi royal family, and creating, I explained the background and the history, in league with the British Empire, the Wahhabi form of extreme Islam, which manifests as the Saudi Arabian version and of ISIS, Islamic State. These are creations of the Donma, who are not Muslim, but Sabbateans, a cult, a satanic cult, which, by the way, as I make clear and Jewish sources make clear in the book, hate Jewish people, hate them with a vengeance. And what this Sabbateanism then became in the next century, the 18th century, was what I call in the book, right to present day, Sabbatean Frankism. And this is because of a man called Jacob Frank, who has been described by Jewish sources as basically one of the most evil people ever to emerge in the Jewish community. Jacob Frank claimed to be the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, in other words, the Messiah, and the reincarnation of the biblical patriarch Jacob. And he took Sabbateanism onto an even greater level of evil and inversion. And every horror you can think of was a good thing and to be desired in this inverted cult. And what it then did was, as it did in Islam, was develop the technique of infiltrating communities and other religions. So Jacob Frank and his Sabbatean Frankists infiltrated the Roman Catholic Church. And they did it by posing as Roman Catholic believers, but really they were Sabbatean Frankists, occultists, what we would call today Satanists. And there came a point, again, I'm being as brief as I can, where Jacob Frank, with this inverted satanic religion, hooked up with Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the founder of the Rothschild dynasty, and a Sabbatean Frankist. Not a Jewish person, no, a Sabbatean Frankist, the Sabbatean Frankism religion, or what you call it, cult. And those two then hooked up with a guy called Adam Weishaupt, and together they created an organization called the Illuminati, called the Bavarian Illuminati to start with. And interestingly, this cult, its Bible is the Kabbalah, the esoteric, mystical work of the Jewish belief system, and particularly a book in the Kabbalah called the Zohar. And Zohar means radiance, illuminated, and that's where Illuminati came from. And they then went about from 1776, when it started, infiltrating all these different communities and religions, and they took them over. And it was the Rothschild Sabbatean Frankist cult that created Israel, and is behind, indeed is the Saudi royal family today, is the inner circle of so many of these organizations. And I show in the book in a chapter called
The founders of Israel and the Saudi royal family are linked.
Absolutely.
Which would be shocking to hear for most people.
But it wouldn't if you do the research, because in the background, the Israeli government and the Saudi royal family have been close. And what's happened since the emergence of this utter psychopath called the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who was involved in this horrific murder of Jamal Khashoggi in Turkey, they have become even close in the public arena in many ways, because they are all basically, if you like, Donma in their different forms. And in the book, in a chapter called Atlantic Crossing, I show how this Sabbatean Frankist cult moved in on America and took over American politics, not least through phenomenal, staggering levels of funding, infiltrated the CIA, infiltrated the National Security Agency, the Pentagon, and from that were able to direct inner networks within these organizations, think compartmentalization, which together were behind 9/11.